Chalaperes. So the bracha on fruit, peres elon, and fruits, is very priya. Excuse me. Birach Chalaperes is if he went ahead and he made a bracha on fruit, very priya doma. So even though of course the bracha is b'beretz, but he is nevertheless b'diavad yotzi. We'll see why. We'll see the idea is because that's that fruits are also priya doma. Peres aretz by preetz lo yotzi. But the other way around, if you make on vegetables that which goes to the ground, preetz not yotzi, there's no tree. In other words, whether or not you're yotzi by saying priya doma, it depends how you view the tree. Is the tree also really kind of part of the ground? So the fruits are also priya doma, or not. So it depends on the following machlekes. It's a bihuda. This is halacha in Hilchos Bikurim, and it says like this: from which field fruits can you bring the bikurim to the Beis Medrash? So Yovesh Hamayim. Let's say at this point the tree is cut down. So maybe you could bring, because it did come from the from the land, but maybe in a kaira. Why in a kaira? Rashi explains. Because in order to read the parsha bikurim, part of the parsha is you have to say Adama Asher Satoli. I brought this from the Adama, but there's no Ara. There's no Adama because it was the tree. You brought it from the tree, but there's no tree anymore. So it's not really. It's disconnected from your land. Yehuda says no, maybe v'koira, because ultimately we perceive it as coming from the ground. So the ground is still there. So you can still say, yeah, I brought it from the Adama. It still came from the ground. So therefore, with the same token, you can always say Bari Pri Adama and B'Yaitza. So Dr. Mavaita al Peres Ha'aretz, on things, fruits of the ground, vegetables, or we'll see the second, wheat, obviously also anything which goes on. Pshita Amra. So obviously you make a Bari Pri Adama. What do you want to make? There's no tree. Because there is a way of looking even at the wheat as a tree. How's that? What was the tree that ate the das? The originator made on the geffen. It was grapes. He said it was the figs. That we see that's how he tried to rectify himself. He sewed together garments from figs, from the fig leaves. And Rabbi Yehuda, this is more interesting right now, says chita on the bottom of Mem Amud Aleph. Rabbi Yehuda oimer chita. It was wheat. So in other words, he defines wheat, a wheat stalk, as a tree, as an elan, because it's called eitz. It's called eitz. It's a das. How does he know that? He has a good logic. This is a good logic. We have halacha. This is halacha. Eina tina kidei likros abba v'ima. The child says his first words. He says, "Mommy, Daddy, Abba, yeah." Ad sheyitum tam dogim. So when does he have gained the ability to speak? Once he starts eating wheat. So dogim. So now we can explain. Since Rabbi Yehuda holds that wheat is tree, itself is a tree, so I would have thought so therefore it's logical to argue with the bottom of them very pre-eitz. Kamash Malon, so we say that's not true. And in fact, So we're learning out for the Mishnah the following rule. This is an important rule. Whenever you have to determine what bracha, is this bracha by priya eitz or by priya dam? Heichad uvachin by priya eitz. When do you make by priya eitz? Heichad v'chishaklas lepeire is legavs of hodamapik. So when the branch is still there and it will reproduce more fruits, that's called a tree. Aval. But if the way that you harvest, like wheat, for example, right? Obviously you harvest the wheat and there's nothing left, and that's just grow again. Less of the gavza. There's no branch, there's no tree, there's no branches. The hodamapik to reproduce. So then that's why many argue that, for example, bananas, even though it kind of looks like a tree, it's, but since, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, if I understand, since it kind of has to regrow every year, so therefore it's a priyadam. Although it's a little bit, I'm not saying, I think it's maybe a little more complicated than that, but I'm trying to think, there's another example. I think Tesis gives other examples. Tutim, he says, berries. So why berries, it's like a bush that kind of regrows every year. So then you have to make a. No, actually, I'm sorry. I take it back. Texas says you make it by priya eitz because the bush does reproduce. I take it back. Yeah. It depends which one. Okay. Yeah. Okay. It's a little bit sticky. Okay. Zok the Gemara weiter. So, if you said shahakol, shakol yabidvaro, mice everything, Kadosh Baruch Hu read everything. So that b'diavad also works. Okay, let's discuss this. Itmar. Rav Huna Omar, there's an exception. Chutz v'rapatz. You cannot take bread and say shahakol on bread. Or wine for them. And Rashi explains, bread and pas are special brachos. They cause other brachos. We use them as the reason for the brachos, the two choshev, and you cannot use a generic stam bracha on pas and yain. Rav Yechon disagrees with the pas and yain, so let's understand what's the machlokes. Then we get to know it. So he wants to say, this machlokes will be based on the following machlokes tonight. And it goes as follows. Raw pas, a person sees bread and he says, come and not pas, Baruch HaMokom, and he gives like a bracha, a praise to Hashem. And this itself is a bracha. He says, Baruch HaMokom. So in fact, Yatza. Similarly, Rateina, come and not Taina, so he said, think, Baruch HaMokom Baruch, Yatza, Remeir. That's, so Remeir says, the concept of bracha is a little more general, The main thing is that we appreciate what we see and we thank Hashem. That's what a bracha really is. That's what it was all about. So that's what he's doing over here. That's sufficient. And Rabbi Yossi, we'll see how this plugs back in a second. Rabbi Yossi, and Rabbi Yossi says, listen, no, you have to understand. A bracha is a formula. This is invented by the Anshe Kisses Gedolah, and you can't just take the concept of brachas and just reinvent it. It doesn't work that way. What the din, the Chazal created that allows you to eat has to be according to the formula that Chazal created. So the Gemara wants to say as follows. Therefore, let us say that Chayra, Rav Huna Amar, Rabbi Yossi would seem to say maybe Rav Huna that says you can't make shahakol is like a b'yaisi. You need the matbeya. You don't need the matbeya, and that's the machlokes whether you can use shahakol on bread. Will be telling whether you need the matbeya. That's why whether or not if it's flexible, it's like a similar idea. Now there's also shahakol somewhat similar to this, common noya. It's a general statement, bracha. It's a general shahakol. It's a general bracha. Is that sufficient? So the Gemara says not true, and the one who's going to reject and show why that's not necessarily how you have to look at it. And it goes as follows. No. Like I said, who says that you cannot use so that. But I don't feel remember. I could agree with Rameir in general that the concept. I'd come to Rameir Hasan but the past at least. It's not called the general bracha. I'm making a specific bracha. I'm just changing the wording a little bit. But the bracha is specific. That's an unspecific bracha. That doesn't work. The Rabbi Yechon, I don't feel like Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi says you can make shahakal and everyone. Rabbi Yossi says you can't remake your brachas. You need them yourself. You're making up your own words. But if you use a formula of the Rabbanan, and this formula is inclusive because it's just very general, it works. I feel very similar. Okay, so that's that discussion. Now, another discussion. Binyomin Roy. So this Binyomin Roy. So he was Korach Rifto. He made a sandwich. He took bread, he wrapped bread, and maybe he went to eat bread. And he said he made the following bracha. Baruch Moed Daipito. So similar, very similar, where he kind of made his own language of the bracha, very similar to changing, what Rameir was saying before. And he said, Baruch Moed Daipito. Amar Rav Yotza. Rav said, Yotza. Now the Gemara says, Amar Rav, Baruch Hashem Bois Kor Shem. And now here there's an additional problem here also. Well, I should say, on one hand, Baruch Rahmana, it is more kind of following the real nusach. It's not just making it up. What he said before. Baruch Hamokum Shabara, Kamenoya. No, he used pretty much the format. Baruch Rahmana, the high rifta. Which is kind of like saying, I might say, but what's the problem? Effectively, why does this work? It's a bracha Hashem because Hashem. You need to say the Shem Hashem, and you didn't say the Shem Hashem. The Amar Baruch. So the more answers, no, he really did. The Amar Baruch Mana Moria Dahai Pita, which is it's like Baruch Hashem, Baruch Atah Hashem, Adnus, Hashem Morech. It's like Lashon Adnus. So he is also kind of translating the Shem Hashem, and therefore that's why it works. Effectively, Gemara. Now assuming this was made for bracha achrayna, for vinshlish brachos. So my answer is no. My yotze and chanami. The kamer Rav Yami yotze bracha rishayim. Of course, he's yotze the hamoitzi. He's not yotze because he's a Muslim. That's a special takani. It's a special din deraisi. You have 3 brachos. So my kamash will him. So what's the chiddush here? Avulav the omer b'lashon choy. Even though he kind of used a translation, he kind of translated the words of the Chazal of the Ashkenazim in Lashon Aramaic. So saying that works. Tanina ve'elu dvar ve'elu nemim b'chol ashur. The following can be said in any language. Parshasaita vida ma'aser kriyashma tefillah because of Mazah. So that's what we said. That's really the same thing. Oh, so it's a kasha. One says, well, we know this already. So we know already that you can, of course, you can translate things. So Satum and Hanimina don't Lashon Choy. If you say exact, precise translation, if it's not precise, since it was close enough, he did say more or less a translation, so it works. So up to you more right to go Rav, call Rav Hashem Bakar Hashem. And like I said before, you have to have, but without Shem Hashem, if you don't say Shem Hashem, that's not bracha, that's the whole bracha. Baruch Hashem. I'm recognizing that Hashem is the source of all bracha. Right? And if you have to say Baruch Hashem, Malchus and Baruch, now you have to say Baruch Hashem. You have to say Baruch Hashem, Elokeinu Melech HaOlam. You have to recognize that Kadosh Baruch Hu is Melech HaOlam. So if you don't do that, it's not Arabai Kavasa de Rab Mistavra, Sani Lavauti Mitzvasecha. Lo Shachachti So we say, the Brachos explains what do these words mean. Is what we say by when we bring the beer meisers. Lovarti is what a person needs to say. Lovarti, wasn't over mitzvah. What does it mean? Lovarti with the varechacha. I made brachos. Shachach v'naska shimcha. Olav. So you see, he says two things. You have to make the bracha, and you have to say the same Hashem. But yet, Ilu Malchus doesn't say anything about Malchus. Look at Tani, Yechon Tani v'lo shachachti v'naska shimcha u'malchus chol. No, Yechon says the interpretation would be here. Also, I didn't forget to say Malchus. That which does not grow from the ground, so he says shahakol. Tahainu, examples, many examples. Even on chaymet, on vinegar, which we'll see is not maybe not the most edible thing. Well, noivlois, v'lagavoy. Noivlois, we'll see in the Gemara what it is. Gavoy is grasshoppers. And our kosher grasshoppers is for those that know the Messiah. Now, in this one, he disagrees. These things are klolas. In other words, they're not. I don't know if they're always klolas, but they could become in the form of a klola. So when you have grasshoppers, you have locusts destroying food. That's a klola. So you don't make a bracha on that. Kol shubin klola v'vorcholov. How you look at meaning harvey? Yesh b'nei means. Now this is already a whole new discussion. Yeah, well, it says if you have the meaning harvey. Because you have an apple and you have a tomato, you don't have an yesh b'nei, or you have a date. Yesh b'nei bin shiva olav uvarch. You always make the bracha on the shivas aminim of Eretz Yisrael, chita, dates, taina, grapes, uvarch. We say no. We'll see what they're saying. Why they disagree? You don't have to make the bracha on the shivas aminim. We'll see what they mean and why. What are these things you make shakal on? For example, meat, what's the name of chayes, dog and fish, al-chalav, milk, beitzim, vin, chia, shakal, hasha ipsa, even for that matter, spoiled bread. It's kind of, it loses its shape bread, but I guess, maybe you can still eat. Yayin shehikri, spoiled yain, and if a person's eating it, he has some benefit from it. He's hungry, he has no choice. So you make shakal, melech al-zamis, like kimeim pitrius, what salt and mushrooms, or zamis, I think is also some type of mushroom. You make omer shakal. So the Gemara says the meimer the kimeim of pitrius, the mushrooms. Sorry, what's zamis is not a mushroom. Zamis is salt water, and kimeim pitrius are mushrooms, right? So the maybe the kimeim pitrius lav giduli karka. And you know why they should make broy priya dama? Doesn't grow from the ground. Vatanya, is that true? Hanedi beveres haaretz also beveres haaretz mutter. A neder a person takes, and I won't eat vegetable. I won't eat from the ground. So also repairs mutter, but now he's mutter becoming pitrius. But if he says perex, but if he says kol gedule karka, that which grows from the ground, alai also. So then mushrooms are included after the go. So why don't you make a boy priyadama if they're gedule karka, the gedule adama? So why don't you make a boy priyadama on mushrooms? Or Abaye miyerek, Abaye mirva ravu miyara. Mirva ravu miyara. They do grow from the ground, but since meinik yonki, they don't get their nutrients from the ground. They come out of the ground. It's true. They develop from the ground, but they're not like plant. They're not like real vegetables that grow and are sustained, that get sustenance from the nutrients of the ground. The mushrooms are really fungus, and therefore, they're not called Priyadama. You can't say the Priyadama. They don't really grow. They're coming out of the ground, but they're not really growing. So they do the karka, they grow out of the ground. The growth comes from the ground, but they're not really growing from the ground. They don't get their sustenance from the ground. Al davar she'ein gidul min karka, Tani al davar she'ein. So al davar she'ein gidul min haaretz, Tani. So why is it included in the list? The list is a boy priyadama is or shahakol is on a davar she'ein gedula min haaretz. So that's not true. You're making shahakol. This is gedula min haaretz. So you're still making shahakol on it. You're right. Tani al davar she'ein yonik min haaretz. We have to edit it and say al davar she'ein yonik min haaretz. Okay, we'll stop here.